Good afternoon or morning or evening or whatever it is in whatever time of the world. That's wrong. Well, wherever you are in the world, whatever time of day it is, good that. We are back with some Tolkien talk here. We're doing the Silmarillion, as you may know. We're giving the notifications time to find you, and hopefully you'll be joining us shortly. We are joined by some esteemed colleagues here, and we will be having a good time talking the Silmarillion specifically now, the Cuenta Silmarillion, so the Silmarillion proper. We're beginning the story part. We've done a bunch of the world building. Now there's still going to be some building, but it's fascinating how even as we move into this chapter, um, things kind of keep coming back, but it presents a lot of discussion points. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce some guesty guests, like this one here.
Hey, what the hell are we supposed to use, man? Harsh language?
I'd like to keep this handy for close encounters.
I heard that.
So, still doing the aliens thing, huh?
Oh yeah, we're covering the merchandise of which I have a lot.
Oh, this week, yeah. You're still doing
We started-
aliens merchandise with Mr.
Oh,
Brown Alliance?
Yeah, you have no idea how much merchandise there is out there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Wow.
And I've already sent Brown a few more items that are pictures of items that he wasn't aware of.
Well, I'm sure he'll see that as a very helpful service, because actually the audience seems to be into it. Everyone likes looking back, I guess, on our younger days. But,
it's just there's so much regret of like, oh man, if only I could have bought that.
Well, yeah, kept it in the package, and now
No. Could have at least bought it.
Oh, okay.
I would have bought that if I had the money back then.
Oh, wow.
And now it's no longer available.
Well, in any case, at least you do have a copy of the Silmarillion, so we are
second
good to go with that. Yes, and we do have, as always, now in episode 3, we are joined by our resident expert. I'll avoid any of the official terms, but she is very knowledgeable about her Tolkien, all things JRR. Please welcome Anna Nielsen.
I am no man.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good morning. Words to live by.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys here again from the future as usual.
Yep. I'm sure you've been kind of enjoying your time in Japan, but I know it is a lot of work that you're doing there. And also you're doing a dissertation at the same time. So I guess enjoyment is not usually a word tied with that, but I guess it's good to get life processes finished.
Oh, I like what I do, and I'm very lucky to get to do it. Later today, they're actually having me guest teach the master's student class. There's a weekly course where all of the students writing master's theses get together and talk about their theses and get grilled a little bit on their organization. And my goal today is to kind of talk about the organization of how I came to write my PhD thesis, in the hopes that it'll be helpful in having the students learn to put together hypotheses that are somewhat original.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, original hypotheses. Well, I mean, that's the thing. There is an art to writing, and especially in the scientific realms, a lot of times everything's about, being accurate, truthful, following protocol. And then, sometimes it gets lost, some of the creative elements where they can kind of sneak in there just to kind of like elevate one paper above another. And
But just in the case of the students here, and this is something their professors have bemoan to me a little bit. It's common among graduate students to think like, oh, in this field that I'm working in, everything's been done, everything's been studied by people who are so much more knowledgeable than I am. And that's not true. In everything, there's always gaps and interesting questions to be explored. And so I'm today kind of, because I know what all of them are writing their theses on, but I'm going to kind of talk about how you first find those gaps, those problems, those goals that you want to work towards, which is not yet even a hypothesis that you're trying to answer, but then how once you've found those goals, you work towards a hypothesis, you work towards limiting your data collection, because that's another problem that many graduate students have, is they want to answer a question so broad that it could never be covered in a master's thesis or a PhD dissertation. And it's like, no, you've got to limit your data sets, you've got to narrow things down, you've got to narrow down the precise questions you're trying to answer, and then how you find patterns in data, and how you shouldn't be afraid of, you want to clearly lay out the sorts of things that you expect, but if you find things that are the opposite of what you expect, that's also part of the process, and that doesn't mean you've failed or anything.
Well, yeah, definitely. It's about definitely, keeping up with the current material, and then asking yourself questions about it, and then communicating, with your colleagues. Even though you may be kind of new to the field as a graduate student, you're still considered a colleague at that point, and hopefully you can get some communication going, and just seeing what questions there are out there. And of course, it's got to be something you love. And so I'm glad to hear that you're doing something you love, because you have to spend so many hours in a day doing it.
Yeah, after this, I've got to prepare some slides for the students, because it's got to be in Japanese, of course. And so talking will be pretty chill, but I need to have things that they can actually read.
Well, and I'm sure you'll be using a little less AI art than I am in the slides that you're presenting. But we have what we have. I will be looking forward to using some other established artwork out there and so forth. But that means, I think, for the next time, because I need a couple weeks to do that, because I want to give proper attribution and reach out to some of these creators. And then at the same time, use, there's only so many things that have been made. So here's something. If you're looking for where there's a room out there, there's room for artists to make some great Tolkien inspired art about different things that some of the artists haven't, envisioned yet. Like just beginning certain sections of this book, I'm looking around, what artwork is out there about this, about Melkor in his first ravaging of the world, and the Valar's attempts to deal with him. And, there's some, but, it's one of those things where there's some things I wanted to include in it. And so just get AI to do it. Well, anyway, so that's where we're picking up the Cuenta Silmarillion, and it begins with Melkor. He's been mentioned before, and I think this is where the writing really starts taking on its true significance, because it is different. It's written as a legendarium, where, quite like our Bible and so forth, you have some stories, but before that you have some things that just make statements about creation, and it's actually it's a little bit more enjoyable than at least King James's writing. But in this,
there's a lot of direct quotes from King James, from the King James version of the Bible, just in this first section, and so I'll point some out.
Tolkien has some
ones that stood out to me.
Has some poetry in the way he says things, where it's like, oh, it's just beautiful and flows. But he has the advantage of writing in his natural language of English, although he makes some words up and some terms and names, of course.
I believe
that's part of his craft. At least he's using English as his vehicle to communicate this, and so that's one advantage.
Rather than saying he made up words, I believe you should be saying he created a language.
Okay, well, all right.
Because it is what he did.
Okay, well,
Oh, there are 14 non-English languages, but yes.
That's true. He was one heck of a linguist, wasn't he?
oh yeah, but still, I guess the point I'm making is he still did English pretty well in writing
Oh
the
yeah.
book.
Yes.
And so we're not blaming any of the books of the Bible. Hebrew and Greek were kind of like the original languages for the Old and New Testaments, respectively. So it's a little different than, and plus they're writing for different purposes. It's visions, it's prophecies, it's things coming to you from divine inspiration. It's a different thing when that's happening and you're trying to put it all down. So anyway, let's get back to Melkor. He's causing trouble. And I think a lot of this, it's kind of interesting because at first, in some of what we covered so far, Melkor isn't very, they say a lot of this was lost. A lot of these initial battles were lost. And so I guess that was Tolkien saying, I'm not going to write this out as a pure story, but this is kind of like the gist of it. And basically what happens is the day is saved at first, initially, by Tulkas, who comes in. The way it's written, it almost seems like Tulkas wasn't necessarily a Valar at first, just one of the Ainur, and then his valiant efforts in helping to limit and constrain Melkor was basically what earned him a valuable spot as one of the Valar under Manwë and Varda. Would that be a correct assessment?
Yeah. Tulkas was the last of the Valar to come into, well, the last to join and the last to come into Middle Earth of the 14.
Mm-hmm.
So he came rather late. And yeah, again, this is a biblical parallel of kind of the idea of a primordial battle that involves the assumption is that since this is in the timeless halls, this is outside the confines of Ea, of Middle Earth, because none of the Ainur have yet entered and become the Valar. This first war that's going on is kind of similar to the notion of sort of a war of the hosts of heaven and of the children of God fighting among each other.
Yeah. I'm trying to look at a direct parallel. I mean, because a lot of times what we would do is jump to, saying, well, Melkor, he's kind of like a Lucifer. He's one of the Ainur that fell. And
there's nothing wrong with that parallel.
Yeah, that's a perfectly good parallel.
Yeah, I know. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just I'm looking for, well, one thing is what we don't have in the Bible so much is there is a heavenly host, but they're not they're not described as being the, I'm getting in dangerous waters here because there's some cases they are. It's just compared to this writing, they're not as active. They are kind of stewards of the earth, but not as much or not as actively. I mean, we don't hear as much about them, as we will be hearing about, the Valar coming up.
I mean, the Valar could be considered in what a lot of Christian traditions would call archangels, as sort of chosen spirits who enact the will of God upon the earth, but in all things they're not able to act of their own will, or if they try to do so, they're sinning. And in that way, sort of like the Melkor and all of his actions that he tries to do that rebel against Eru Ilúvatar, he's actually fulfilling the design of Eru in everything he does. But we'll talk a little bit later. I don't think we'll even get to today, but when we talk about Aulë and the creation of the dwarves, how Aulë tries to do something kind of not of his own will, not because he wants to rebel against Eru, but because he wants to create peoples that can learn from him. And in the making of the dwarves, he creates creatures that don't have wills of their own. They don't have movement of their own unless Aulë wants them to move. And then Edu Ilúvatar, this was all part of Edu Ilúvatar's plan, even though Aulë didn't realize it. So Edu knew the whole time, but addresses Aulë, kind of calls him out much in the way that we see Adam be addressed by the Lord in Genesis 3, when the Lord calls to Adam and Adam hides himself. There's a very similar episode where Aulë is very shamefacedly comes to Edu and is like, I'm sorry, I didn't want to disparage your creation. I wasn't trying to create for myself. I just wanted to have other beings to appreciate the beauty of what you've created. Here, I'll go ahead and destroy them. And Edu is like, no, actually, this is my will, and I've given them spirits of their own. This is all good. And everything, Aulë submits his creative will to the will of Edu Ilúvatar, much like, I suppose, righteous archangels don't act of their own will. They're just fulfilling the will of God.
Well, even Melkor's acts were part of the initial song, the music.
Yes.
The Ainulindale that was being composed. Melkor was being discordant then, before time and before the creation. And so in that matrix, or that creation of the creation there, when it takes form, then his actions are basically revealing what was composed in his part of the music to begin with. So it's really, deep stuff, and it brings up some considerations, that we can ask and really talk a lot about and enjoy in our own lives. It's like, so even some of the hard stuff was part of God's plan, huh? And it's like, well, yeah, I guess so.
But yeah, Tolkien makes this very Christian work, even though he famously talks about disliking allegory. But he has another famous quote where he talks about The Lord of the Rings being a fundamentally Christian work, unconsciously so at first, but then consciously in the revision. And this is perhaps even more so, although Tolkien felt that like C.S. Lewis's work was a little more on the nose with its Christian allegories.
Yeah. Definitely it was, but remember, this is something where I think the complete compilation of the Silmarillion was completed by Christopher Tolkien. So it's hard to see what the original vision for these different works was going to be. Was it all going to be one thing like it was released, or was it going to be in different parts? So we don't know. The way it comes to us, it really does come as like a world in a package that explains the rest of the writings, or gives a background for it, a world and a creation myth, and the supreme divinity in Eru, and then the heavenly host, and of course the fallen figure. So all that comes through, but I don't know if it was intended to be all in one book at first.
I'm very glad, though, for Christopher Tolkien's editorial work, and that we get this at all.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Honestly, I have to say he showed incredible bravery in even attempting this, let alone publishing it. I mean, considering
to organize his father's manuscripts and his notes.
Considering who Tolkien was and everything he had already published, it took a lot of nerve for Christopher to say, I'm going to publish Dad's notes the way I think he would have published them. It's just, okay, if you think so. And wow, great job too.
Yeah. The time slot is one that is a little new to a lot of our viewers. So we're actually doing pretty good on watchers, folks. Please don't be shy. We do have a chat here, and we do have an expert to talk to. If you have questions, like if you're just a new reader, you may not even have started the Silmarillion yet, we're here to help and answer your questions.
What time is it there in normal places? Because in my mind it's just like super early in the morning. So
it's 4:30.
Of course, no one's here.
It's 4:30 p.m. for Lawrence. 3:30 for me.
Yeah. Oh gosh, so sorry. It's still like mid-afternoon.
Sorry, you're the one that got up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, really.
Even earlier. And then you have slides to make and real work to do beyond this labor of love. But the brave Tulkas, the valiant one, is the one who is able to subdue Melkor at first. He's going around this new creation called Arda, and Melkor was basically like probably causing fires and everything. Basically, a lot of disruption is how it's described. And then Tulkas is really into what is it, physical feats of strength and everything, and basically was like the bouncer that created some order and shoved Melkor out into what was described as the outer darkness, where Melkor was kind of like brooding in the outer darkness and looking at, the Valar living in this world, or at least taking care of it. This is before any of the children came. This is before the elves or the men or anything. And actually, at this point, it's even before the beasts. That comes up soon. So it's hard to say what was physically on the world at this point, because it's like coming up that Yavanna actually begins the process of, well, her seeds come to life, basically. So anyway, the next step, we have Aulë, the crafter, the guy that's into building and making things, and he creates 2 lamps, and everything in these stories has a name. So Aulë builds, what is it, Ilúin and Ormal. Yes, Ormal, and puts one in the north and one in the south, and these serve as the lights for the world to start.
Now, before he did that, of course, Yavanna had planted her seeds.
Well, yeah, planted the seeds, and the seeds come up soon after this. But it's basically, this is describing how the Valar are creating order in the world.
It's interesting how her plants has started to grow, but specifically no fruits, no flowers are yet on Middle Earth.
Yep. I thought that was neat too.
Trees.
Yeah,
trees, ferns, mosses, grass. Yeah.
Yeah,
and of course, no trees ever have flowers or fruit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that.
Well, I mean, it's an artificial division that doesn't quite work as we understand trees and things in the real world. But the whole notion is that the spontaneous generation of trees and things of themselves had not yet happened. They were all growing from the seeds, as Yavanna had put together as part of the Ainulin delay as part of the song.
Yeah. See, some of this takes some putting together, because in reading it again, I don't know how many times now, basically still, even last night, it came to me as like, all right, she planted the seeds, they're coming up now, it says that. And then, then the line comes up that, but yet not a flower was made yet. And I'm like, what? No flowers? What? And then you say it beautifully right there. It's like, okay, there's no self-creation yet. There's no or automatic creation yet. This is just kind of like, I don't know how you would describe it, but it's like a primordial creation, I guess.
I believe the first fruits and flowers that are mentioned are the ones after the time of the lamps, after the lamps are destroyed. Spoiler. Mm-hmm. The light is again gathered and is made into the 2 trees. And of course, Laurelin is the female tree and produces fruit. And Telperion is the male tree and produces flowers, even though that would be a female thing in trees. But that's the first fruit and the first flower. Again, kind of a biblical parallel of the idea of the first fruits of them that slept. But do you know the meaning of Ilúin and Ormal? The names of these 2 lamps, which were placed on massive pillars. There's a pattern that you'll see throughout Tolkien of him doing kind of dichotomous pairs. Well, they're not even dichotomous. They're very very collaborative, but he often does pairs of things, and so kind of very similar to the later trees. So Ilúin means like sky blue, although Ilúin was more likely silvery light than blue light. It's a little unclear. And Ilúin is thought to be, so it's one of the lamps that's placed on a huge pillar to light all of Middle-earth. The pillars are said to be taller than any of the mountains, and one is in the north and one is in the south. And Ilúin is the one in the north. And so even though this is not explicitly mentioned in the text, Ilúin would be the one that's associated with north, with silver, with the moon eventually. The light that was used to light Ilúin eventually kind of goes into Tilion, into the moon, and then Tilion, one of the Ainur spirits, is set to steer the moon. And then Ilúin, even though these lamps are not beings, it's probably more male associated, whereas Ormal means something like high gold, lofty gold. And so it's in the south. It would be more associated with the sun eventually. It's associated with, again, this is conjecture, but scholars would assume that Ormal is associated more with femininity and with eventually the tree Laurelin that will be made as sort of a gold-silver pair once the light from the lamps has been spilled over all of Middle-earth and has to be gathered again. But the light has to be gathered and taken to Valinor and remade into the trees.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I tried to do the best I could with my trees back there. I got as close as I could to silver and gold, but it's really more of like a light blue and orange. But in any case, yeah, the scholars that research this, how do they, I mean, obviously they probably look at letters, and there's been a wealth of letters between John and Christopher, father and son, about a lot of the writings. And then probably they would look at.
Oh no!
I'm sorry.
It's not. It's not just me.
So words.
Oh no, Lawrence.
Oh,
You're
Lawrence,
back. Okay.
you froze up there, man.
Yeah.
I think he's still freezing up.
Oh no. Okay, but it's not me. It's not my internet.
No. You're perfectly. You just froze up a couple times, Lawrence.
Okay. Am I back?
You seem to be back now. Yeah.
I think you're so back. We're so back.
Like 30 seconds, you were frozen.
Great. Well, then, rather than, I guess maybe the question was too long and StreamYard was telling me to put it more simple. What are some of the resources that experts draw upon in order to make, even in this case, like educated guesses as to meanings of some of the words? I guess some of it would be the etymology of the sounds of the words themselves, and some of it might be notes or letters between.
Yep, all of that, as you say, notes and earlier drafts are pulled on quite a lot, and even in devising the languages. So in devising like Quenya, for instance, a lot of words changed over time, and so there are plenty of words in Quenya and Sindarin that don't have definitions at all. But scholars will point at, okay, here's like an early draft where in his Gnomish, which was Tolkien never put this together as a formal language in something like the Silmarillion, but Gnomish was the tongue that it was the first sort of elvish tongue that he worked on for a long time, and then eventually split into these two languages, into Quenya and Sindarin. So people will go back to his notes on Gnomish, and occasionally people will go to notes on Welsh or other real world languages and say, okay, in Welsh this means this, and Tolkien might have been inspired in this way to have this meaning. So there's worthwhile etymological comparisons for a lot of words. There's a lot where we just can't say for sure. Ormal is really, really clear. It is meaning like lofty gold. Ilúin is a little less clear in meaning sky blue, but it probably means that. But yes, the people draw on all sorts of sources, scholars that is, draw on all sorts of sources, and even people will draw on, there's lots of legends about like Tolkien's life. There's lots of folklore that's been spread, and also just what's the word, like first or second or third hand accounts, and so they'll draw on different ones and talk about their validity. There's a few, especially from Tolkien's earlier life, there's a few stories that probably aren't true at all. but that people that scholars draw on to talk about. I've read enough articles by Tolkien scholars. They're really interesting to read because you're like, okay, people are pulling on different accounts and like meetings held in 1970 and then meetings held in 1950 when Tolkien was still alive, and people who attended his lectures who said he said this, and friends of the family who said that when he stayed at X farm, he did this or said that. And there's different sources of varying reliability.
Right. And so here we have our unworthy depiction of Yavanna. But the interesting thing here is it's almost like the first draft of the world, and the Valar are getting to it. And, after the mention of basically plants beginning to grow, although they weren't flowering yet, there were the beasts of the world just appeared. So basically it's probably from the song. It's from the song before creation. And so they just come about. And I think that's kind of cool in a way, because it's like if you were there during a creation, it's like, how would things look? And I've always found that kind of like interesting. If this is happening, how are things going to look? Well, I guess they're just going to kind of appear there.
but he specifies no birds have yet come.
Yes, birds are Manwë's thing.
Yep, they're biding their time. Everything seems to have a time when it will appear, including the Ilúvatar.
Yes, there's an order to all of the children of Eru, in which they're to come as well.
And the Valar do not know when it is.
Yes. Lawrence, I think it's interesting you point out the notion of sort of almost multiple. It's not like there are multiple creations of the earth, but like multiple stages within the creation myth where things are tried. The light is put forward into the world in different ways, and then it's destroyed in some way. And the Valar have got to try again. You see, there are actually a lot of parallels with creation myths throughout the world, where it's like the gods might try multiple times to create people. Though, like immediately, I was thinking of the Popol the Maya creation story, which is where the gods create the earth, mountains, oceans, trees, forests, but everything's silent. So they try and they want to create beings that can move, that can speak, that can talk, and that can praise the gods. So they try and they create animals first, but animals can only squawk and make animal noises. So they're like, okay, we'll try again. And they make people, but they make people out of mud, and they're not very good. They don't hold together super duper well. So they try again and they create people, but they're made out of wood. And they kind of, they're just too stiff and they don't work very well again. So they try one more time to create people, but this time they found the perfect material, and it's maize, it's corn. And so they create the first 4 people out of corn. And that's why mankind in the Maya cosmology relies on corn as their staple food.
Well, yeah. Well, there's a lot of deep significance in all these creation stories. It's basically our desire as human beings to try and learn why we're here and
to understand.
Yep. And it's an inherent part of us, and that's why we do this stuff.
But that's not why Tolkien did this. Tolkien wanted to create a mythology for England.
Oh, I said this is why we do this stuff. I know that he.
Gotcha.
But but you see, what he puts a lot into his work is still, I guess in reading the Bible and practicing his faith was his way of understanding why we're here. And he does include that, even though he tries to avoid allegory. He includes it kind of in his work, so I think it's part of his own self-exploration. Honestly, even though he's not trying to speak in literal terms, maybe he's just talking about, honestly, or maybe even not even preaching. It's more like exploring. He's like thinking about these forces of creation and then the forces of destruction and how do they work together,
right.
And
the steps that are taken in this creation very, very similar to the days of creation in Genesis.
Mm-hmm. Stages of creation, periods
Mhm.
of creation.
Yeah.
You see it here. And so this time right now, the time of the lamps is called the spring of Arda, because quite a lot grows. The earth is vegetated. Yavanna's doing her work. I didn't realize I'm wearing a green shirt today
Oh,
because
yeah.
Yavanna's always in green, I suppose. It's for the
Yeah.
springtime of Arda.
What does it mean that
Except
I'm
for
wearing
last
brown?
week, I didn't have her in green. I had her in a floral pattern.
What does it mean that I'm wearing a brown shirt?
You tell me.
You're dirt.
Oh, it means I'm a fan of Firefly. That's what it means.
You're a soil upon earth.
Oh, that's not as nice as my idea.
Firefly. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. I still have yet to see Firefly. So
You're fired.
again.
Firefly.
Well, but anyway, here I tried to do the best I could with the description. But Almarin is the first home of the Valar here on Arda, and it's an island towards the middle of the earth. I guess you could think of it as like an equatorial region of earth, and that middle earth is where things were, I guess, most abundant, as one would expect, and that's where the Valar chose to be. And there was an island there called Almarin, and on that island there was a central lake, and it was like at the north and the south where the two lamps were, but this is where they decided to kind of like take up residence. And it's kind of brief. There's
It's essentially the middle of the entire. It's the middle of Arda, and allows them to look at everything they've created and watch it grow and rest.
Right.
It's also the area where the light from the two lamps meets and mingles, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
the light from both is strongest, and so the sort of the generative power plants grow most abundantly there. They grow all over Arda, but because the light is strongest in the center, that's where they're most productive, I suppose. And then also, it's not immediately clear on first reading, but at this point, all of Arda and all of Middle Earth and the continents were all symmetrical. They were all perfect in shape, and so one can assume the continent of Middle Earth was at this time essentially a perfect circle. Probably the lake was a perfect circle as well, and the Isle of Almarin in the center was probably also round. And it was only after this point when Melkor casts down the two lamps and destroying fire comes out and mars the surface of Middle Earth that the continents become asymmetrical and are never able to be restored again to their perfect shape, which I think, I mean, Tolkien had, a notion of plate tectonics, but as it was fairly new. Well, at the time that he was writing, actually, it was still plate tectonics wasn't really fully understood, but he wasn't going to go with that anyway. But I think it's interesting that he thought of this of like, here's how the geography of my land attained its current shape.
It's funny about the plate tectonics in our current maps with the north at the top. It makes it look like all of the continents are dripping south.
I suppose, yeah.
It's just the way the continents formed and the way we chose to orient our maps to the North Star, here in the north at least. But it's a really wild coincidence.
Yeah, I guess so. It's hard to say, because if you look back, I guess, over the whole history and at least what we're theorizing as like the history of continental movements and the way the plates have moved and everything, I think, is it still believed that the first one, or not believed, but is that still the name that they, no, I think it's the second, like, supercontinent was called Pangea.
Mm-hmm.
There's another name for the first one, I don't remember, but they were kind of like centered and all together and kind of like around that, the point of, the equatorial area, or basically underneath. Like, basically it wasn't all at the top or at the bottom. It was just kind of
Mhm.
like around the middle. But
No, there've been various like supercontinents at various times that have a whole bunch of different names and numbers. Another supercontinent was Gondwana land, right? And there's another one that sounds like Laurelin, but isn't Laurelin because Laurelin is one of the two trees, and it's on my mind. It's gonna bother me. But yeah, the Earth's polarity is reversed a bunch of times, which is actually a way we can tell like very, very deep time in rocks and things. And then of course the supercontinents have converged at different points throughout like Earth's latitude as well.
Yeah, I mean, heck, things keep going the way they are. Eventually, California is going to meet up with Japan.
In a while, perhaps.
Yeah, it'll be a while.
It'll be a bit.
Yeah, it'll be a bit.
Anyway, Laurasia, that's one of the sub supercontinents that Pangaea eventually broke into were Gondwana land and Laurasia. I was like, why am I thinking Laurelin? Because we're talking about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, but yeah.
But when it happens, your commute back to the States will be a lot shorter.
Yes, glad my immortality will be guaranteed, and my job security too.
Hey, I know I'm immortal. I haven't died yet.
Oh boy! All right, give it time.
Isn't that how it works?
Autumno.
Lawrence is threatening him. Oh my god!
Yeah, I tell you, that was a little dark.
I have no power.
That was a little dark.
I have no power.
I feel unsafe.
Well, I'm sorry. At this time of my life, I think about stuff like that every day. Not you, but me and everything.
I was about to say that's it. That's it. I'm out of here.
And of course, I'm reading all these creation stories and. Oh well, Autumno. Talking about cheery subjects. Now, Melkor was off in the darkness. Kind of like observing from a distance, but then he chose to sneak in while the other Valar were sleeping.
Specifically, Aulë and Tolkien.
Yeah. Well, those were the guys that really watched out for him, and so Melkor was able to sneak past them into the north. Now, one would think, fire.
Because he had secret friends and spies among the Maiar.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them were very sus.
Yeah, and the Maiar was something we didn't get to last week at the end of the Quenta because I was figuring that'll be too short, and I'd like the titles for each episode to kind of like be what it is and not just have another thing shoved in. And I know we're going to be going over the Maiar as they come up in the stories, so I don't think we missed anything there. And in fact, the Valar get repeated in this section so much that you really do. It still is reading that you may have to go back over a few times because a lot is said in a short amount of time. But you do get a lot of repetition that after a while you get to know who Manwë is, you get to know who Varda is, and Aulë, and even Ulmo, and in this case Oromë, the hunter, and Tulkas, who just think of them as mighty Tulkas. They're the guys that are really, well, none of the Valar like Melkor, but these are the guys that are just kind of like the first to action, I guess, in dealing with them. Although Melkor is said, and it has been said multiple times now, the one that he fears the most is Varda.
Mm-hmm.
Tolkien was the last one to come in against Melkor, and he's the one that drove him off.
Yeah, the most successful. But like as time goes on, anytime Melkor seems to be getting designs on things, it's like Oromë and Tulkas who are wroth. But I found that interesting how here now building his underground world where we even see the beginnings with the Balrogs and everything, these demonic like entities that were born deep in the earth, so Melkor could hide here and basically mass his forces. This is where we
Balrogs, see. Do you know what the alternate name for Autumno is? Autumno is the Quenya word, and it has a name in Sindarin as well. That comes out in the Fellowship of the Ring film.
I was going to say it's not It begins with Ka. I can't think of the.
Gandalf says it when he faces down the Balrog. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Udun.
No, go ahead.
Yes,
Udun.
Udun. Yes, you got it. Udun
Dark
means
fire shall not
hell,
avail you,
essentially.
flame of Udun.
Yeah, so Udun means hell in Sindarin, and is another name for the fortress of Atumno, which of course is subterranean and evil and kind of cold and hot all at once. And yes, the Balrogs being the flame of Udun talks about how they are associated with this place.
Now, the Balrogs are fallen Maiar, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Corrupted Maiar,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Melkor was, corrupts things, and that includes other beings.
Yeah.
And so this is where that's coming together. And I think this also shows insight as to why Varda would be the one that he fears the most, because she's the Valar that's most associated with light in, bringing forth the stars. And a place where he finds solace is deep in the earth, like in the darkness is where.
Hidden from the light of the lamps. Actually, we didn't mention it, but I really liked how the lamps were a collaborative project between several of the Valar. Of course, it was Aulë who actually made the physical lamps, but it was Yavanna first who beseeched Manwë for them to be made, because she wanted all of the seeds she'd planted to have light to be able to grow. And so then Aulë made the lamps and also the pillars that they're on. And then Varda, the Queen of the Stars, where it said that the light of Ea shines most, the light of Eru shines most purely in her face. Varda was the one to fill the lamps with, it's unclear, some sort of fire, some sort of fuel that produces light, and then Manwë hallows them, so he blesses them in some way, or through some kind of kingly authority makes them so that they are authorized to work, and then they're set up to light all of Middle Earth. And Melkor hates the light and is hiding from it deep in Utumno, because the light can go through all of Middle Earth, but it can't penetrate under the Iron Mountains where he is.
Yeah, and I thought about that again when Varda later does this with the two trees. She's often described as pouring light. It's almost like liquid light, and I find that fascinating. But it in most ways also really poetic, because one of the things that comes to my mind when I read that was, believe it or not, the star card in tarot, where there's a woman pouring water and the stars are above her and everything. So it's almost like I think of Varda, because it's like she's associated with the stars and she pours light into things.
I don't believe you.
Okay.
Well, you said believe it or not.
Okay. I got to be careful about everything I say around you.
Melkor's here in Utumno. He's seething, he's coping, he's molding, as the kids might say. He's really angry.
He's molding.
Folks that are watching this, I know there are a few there, and I hate to jinx a stream by mentioning folks that are out there, but you feel free to feel welcome and invited to ask some questions or to share thoughts, because
smash that like button.
Yes, and that helps too.
It's my fault that your streaming time's weird. I've ruined everything.
No worries, because I know a lot of people also check these out after the facts. But here's after the fact. But the thing with the Silmarillion is it is known as a more difficult work to read, and as we're talking here, we're all talking like we're. Just don't be intimidated, folks.
I was going to say, what do you mean?
What I'm saying.
What do you mean? We all.
We all, yeah. We all.
I do not sound like an expert at all.
I'm not saying we sound like experts. I stopped short of that because I thought of me. But the whole idea is it can be intimidating and stuff. But folks, please,
I don't bite.
We don't bite. No. But finally, in this first efforts of the Valar to make Arda a beautiful place, Melkor is going around being disruptive, destroying things, and part of that is also destroying the lamps in the north and the south. and then laying ruin to Almarin. And so it is, like plate tectonics in a way, and volcanic activity and everything, continents being ripped apart or crammed together, and it's it's a creation story, and so it and seeing the parallels between that and like creation myths on Earth, where a lot of times they're used to describe some things, and some natural phenomena.
Pretty famously, at the end of the first stage, it's the Wars of Wrath that caused the sinking of the continent of Beleriand. And so, again, the shape of the whole Earth is changed by the notion is that these are conflicts that are so big that the shape of the whole Earth can be changed by them.
Earth-shattering conflicts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think about the physics of how an entire continent can just sink under the water and the sea level not rise enough to flood the rest, but
Atlantis.
Yeah. Very, very big Atlantis.
Yeah, there you go. Now, of course, the only reason Melkor did come out the way he did was because the Valar had found Autumno and they were about to assault it. And he went, surprise, bitches, before they could actually do anything.
Yeah.
And then after basically running around like a loon, destroying as much as he could, he went, uh-oh, here comes Tulkas, and ran like a little scared baby back to Autumno before they could get him.
I don't think the Valar had at that time discovered Autumno. They'd been looking for it, but they didn't know yet where he was because the light didn't penetrate.
Oh, forgive me. Yes, they were looking for his hiding place. Yeah.
When he judged, he was trusting that Autumno would be safe for him to retreat to if he needed to, and so he chose to strike right after the marriage of Tulkas.
Yeah, he knew they were looking for him. That's what made him come out.
And Tulkas, once again, he married Orome's sister, and what's that? Nessa. That's the thing, Nessa, and then the crying Nienna. Those two I get two N. Two names beginning with N, I often get them confused. So, folks, yes, I know it can be challenging, but Nessa, the fleet-footed sister of Oromë, kind of like Oromë the hunter, and wildlife can run fast. Nessa runs fast,
Mm-hmm.
And that's who Tulkas married, and then right after the marriage, Melkor causes trouble again. So they got to build again. And now here's where, there's always a lot of names. And the thing is, when you get them down, they sound really good because there was a lot of thought into creating these words. And then there's also the way they fit together, it's really beautiful too. So that's why I threw a few of them together here, because sometimes I need to kind of remind myself, okay, what is what? Because when you hear of the undying lands, for example, that the elves speak of, and then when you think of some of the other terms, Amon, Valinor, Valmar, and then you have Teniquetal and the Pelori, it's like, okay, let's dissect it here, so this could be helpful to some readers and everything. Amon is basically the land in the west, generally speaking. I believe I'm correct in that. Like, it's a continent. Yes. Yeah, it's a continent, the western continent. So think of, Middle Earth. And now I know I'm on a camera here, so I'm going to be doing this the wrong direction. So you have Middle Earth, and then to the, is it west? No, that's east. So this way, west, you have an ocean, and then you have the western continent, Amon. And that ocean is where some people do like to swim. And,
we have an entry in the chat. Georges Rex says, when I read it, he says, when I read it, I had to make a diagram to remember which Valar was which.
Relatable.
There are diagrams out there. I could use one of those, but I tend to do the AI thing instead. I should make a diagram. And so, link together those who are married and those who are called, brother and sister, and then, those that are off on their own. And then you have the ones, the Aratar, those are the higher Valar. And man, there's a lot to remember. But
and there'll be a quiz after.
Oh no, we're not going to scare anyone away. So that's the whole continent is Amon. Now in there is Valinor and Valmar, but those two are coming up in the next slide. But just imagine on this continent, it's surrounded by a mountain range. That's called the Pelori. They're kind of like,
or rather, the Pelori, the mountains were created at this time by the Valar so that they needed to create a stronghold, a fortification against Melkor. And so at this time they decamped from Middle Earth, which was their first abode, because they were afraid to, they knew they could go after Melkor if they really wanted to, but they were afraid to, first they were trying to fix all of the problems that he'd made, all of the destruction, and they were afraid to tear open the earth to find where Utumno was, because they knew that the children of Ilúvatar, both the elves and the men were slumbering in the earth and had not yet been brought forth as per the design of Eru, and they didn't know when they were going to be brought forth, and so they were afraid to tear it to the earth, because they knew that the children of Ilúvatar were there somewhere and didn't want to mess things up. So Spring of Arda ends, they move over to Amon, and then they raise these Pelori, these mountains, to protect themselves, and they're really, really tall, and they block all light that they eventually have from the trees. They block light from going into the rest of Middle Earth.
And then there's a central mountain there, and that's called Tani Quetal. And there's a gap in that mountain called the Kalakira, and that gap is where the light of the two trees eventually comes through. And so it's a lot of words at first.
Well, Tolkien provides several more names for Tani Quetal as well, because it's such a holy mountain. Tani Quetal means, I think, holy mountain, but he also gives us Oelose, which means everlasting whiteness in Quenya, and it's also called Elerina, which means crowned with stars. And then later on in Sindarin, it's also called Amon Uilos, which is the same as Oeolose, which means everlasting, like forever white mountain. Amon means mountain or hill. A lot of people know
like
from
Amon
Hen. Yeah. Yes, Amon Hen means the hill of seeing.
I thought it would be the hill of chickens.
Oh yeah, it has the platform with griffins on it in the book, in the films, because they wanted to represent. So Amon Hen and Amon Law on both sides of the long lake, the lake that has the Falls of Raos in it. Amon Hen is the hill of seeing. Amon Law is the hill of hearing.
Yeah.
And they were traditional sort of like guard places, guarding one of the entrances to the realm of Gondor.
And a lot of people did not understand. A lot of people didn't understand in Lord of the Rings when Frodo went up to the seat at Amon Hen and was able to look all the way into Mordor. Why he was able to look that far? They say, it's because he has a ring. Like, no, it's because he's on Amon Hen.
I suppose the ring counts as a force multiplier there.
Yeah, probably.
So I need to ask, and feel free to let me know if you're not quite sure. But Quetal, I mean, when I hear that reminds me of like Aztec or Mayan, like one of the Native American words. I don't know if it seems most of what he was trying to make, a mythology for
in
Britain.
Mayan.
But he drew upon a lot of European mythos in doing that.
Right, so, but in Mayan, Quetal would be Quet'-L usually.
Yeah, I know, but a lot of times when you're using sounds, you don't always spell it exactly the same way. You like just derive things. So I don't know. It's an interesting sound to me. And it kind of stood out to me that, and I thought, well, that's not something that was really part of his plan, but who knows?
You see the quest sound a lot because Tolkien thinks that he was trying in writing specifically Quenya to make something that a language that was really really beautiful and that had sounds that he thought were among the most beautiful. There's a famous little anecdote, I suppose. Tolkien believed that the words cellar door were like some of the most beautiful sounds that we have in English. Divorcing the phrase cellar door from the context that we know it to mean,
Oh yeah,
and
I could hear it
imagine it
now.
not said with my American rhotic R, because we say door very differently than Professor Tolkien would have said, but he would pick words and sounds in isolation that he thought were incredibly beautiful, and those were the ones that he included for both of his elven languages, but particularly for Quenya. And so that quest sound you see quite a lot. Taniquetal, I think, quite literally means like high snow peak,
Hmm.
and I think the que part means snow in this case, but
Hmm.
don't quote me on that.
Okay.
I'm gonna check that actually because it's gonna bother me.
Oh no, you're well on your way. You say no, you're not a Tolkien scholar, but if you're not,
I'm
you're
not.
well on your way. You're on your way. You're
Oh,
on your.
okay, I had it right. So ta means high, nique means white or snow. It could be both, and til means kind of like a point.
All right, there we go. So, in any case,
And there are many names besides.
oh
Yes.
yeah, everything has multiple names. But you get the first ones down, and then another reading, you learn the others. Plus, with the repetition of stories, and I don't mean repetition; it's like not the same story, but with all the different stories that come, then you start to learn the alternative names because you actually have stories about the elves interacting with a certain area, and then you get their name for it, and so it helps you remember things, just as it's helpful when the names of the Valar are repeated and they're spoken about again and again. You remember who they are. Same thing happens with other things, but we're here to help as well. Now, then we have Valinor is, yeah, okay, I got it right. Yeah. I saw Valmar there. I thought I had an AR in Valinor. Okay, Valmar, and now Valmar has golden gates in front of it, and it is basically the high city of Valinor. Think of it as like the continent of um,
Aman.
Amon. Yeah. Every time I'm thinking Armon. No, Amon. So the continent of Amon, and on it we have Valinor, which is considered to be the spread out, country
Yeah, it's
within
the
the
realm
continent.
of the Valar, and you could
Yeah,
use Valinor and Aman almost interchangeably.
yeah. And then Valmar is the city. I guess you would say the main city, and it's got its golden gates there. And I guess this is what some of the children of Ilúvatar in their creations were striving for.
Hmm.
And some of the elven kingdoms were trying to look almost like that, like Valmar. And I guess wasn't the Numenorians, weren't they trying to do
Yes,
a bit of
the
Valmar themselves?
the
Yeah.
Numenorians as well had never been to the Blessed Land, but they worshipped. Well, they revered the Valar, and they that's why many of the High Numenorians spoke Quenya rather than Sindarin, even though they were men.
Hmm.
They spoke the higher Elven tongue, and they sought to recreate some of its glory and majesty. Well, in Numenor and then later in Middle Earth, which is why Elendil, pretty famously, when he lands in Middle Earth, he speaks the Oath of Elendil, which you can hear Aragorn singing in The Return of the King. It's such a great oath.
Oh,
Hmm.
But it's Elendil saying that he will try to recreate the glory of both Numenor and of the sort of reflected glory of Valmar here in Middle Earth. He says, what is it? Etorelo endoreno to the end. Out of the great sea into this place have I come. Sino me maruvan arhidinyar tenambar meta. Here will I dwell, and my descendants and my heirs until the ending of the world is the oath that he speaks. And then Aragorn singing it again at his coronation in the film, I think was really suitable because it works for the beginning of the Fourth Age of Middle Earth also.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry, I do have the Oath of Elendil memorized.
No,
Not in English. I had to kind of quickly translate.
No, but
I think if you
obviously
search the actual English translation, it will be slightly different from what I just said.
for the film, they did, have to put it to a melody.
Viggo wrote that melody. It's
Did
beautiful.
he really?
Yeah, he wrote the melody to the Oath of Elendil.
Well done,
that was
Viggo.
actually, they were going to have him chant it, but that was one moment where, again, Peter Jackson's a really good director for this sort of thing, and so he, especially for a lot of the moments towards the end of the Return of the King, like when it's been extensively memed, I know, but like when Frodo wakes up and he sees Gandalf for the first time, Peter comes to Ian McKellen and goes, "What do you think Gandalf would do?" And Ian goes, "I think Gandalf would laugh." And so they have him laugh, and it's a really lovely moment. And yes, I know it's been memed now extensively, but it is still a lovely moment. And it's the same thing as like, okay, Aragorn has just been crowned, and Peter comes to, well, they were talking about the scene rather, and Peter comes to Viggo and goes, "What do you think Aragorn would do?" The crown has been placed on his head. He turns around and Viggo goes, "I think he would sing." And Peter goes, "Okay, all right, you're on the hook for writing the melody of what he's going to sing." The words, of course, are Tolkien's.
Oh,
That's
wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
And actually, Oath of Elendil you can hear in the soundtrack of the first film as well, as they're coming up to the Argonath, the statues of Elendil and Isildur, guarding the entrance to the ancient kingdom. As they're looking up, the track that plays, the choir is actually singing the Oath of Elendil at that moment as well. Anyway, the whole point is that the Númenóreans were trying very hard through their use of Quenya rather than Sindarin. They were trying very hard to, very respectfully, they weren't trying to claim the immortality of the Eldar or anything for themselves, but they were trying to show that they respected and revered both the High Elves and the Valar, and that they admired their culture and their beauty and their perfection such that they wanted to recreate it in their own kingdoms of men.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lawrence, to go way off track.
That was not Eru's gift for them.
Oh no, we'll get to that.
Yeah. So that's coming up. Don't be intimidated, folks, but basically, yeah. It's a deep world. And now what did I have next? Yes. Lorelin and Telperion. And here once again the trees have it's a male and female tree, which does exist in nature. There are some male and female trees.
Would you two mind if I read this passage, because it just really is a beautiful passage?
No, go ahead.
Go for it.
Making sure. Okay. Talking about the city Valmar of Many Bells. Before its western gate, there was a green mound, Ezelahar, that is named also Corollare, and Yavanna hallowed it, and she sat there long upon the green grass, and she sang a song of power, in which was set all her thought of things that grow in the earth. But Nienna thought in silence, and watered the mold with tears. In that time the Valar were gathered together to hear the song of Yavanna, and they sat silent upon their thrones of council in the Mahanaxar, the ring of doom, near to the golden gates of Valmar. And Yavanna Kematari sang before them, and they watched. As they watched, upon the mound there came forth 2 slender shoots, and silence was all the world in that hour, nor was there any other sound save the chanting of Yavanna. Under her song the saplings grew and became fair and tall, and came to flower. And thus there awoke in the world the 2 trees of Valinor. Of all the things which Yavanna made, they have the most renown, and about their fate all the tales of the elder days are woven.
Wow.
Tolkien's prose is just lovely. Thanks for reading that.
Thank you for letting me. Yeah, it's just as I thought I was going to stop there. I was like, no, I need to. No, I need to.
No, you don't want to stop. And in doing this, it's not like we're trying to prevent anyone from reading. I mean, definitely read. And so far, I guess, for those like me who have some vision problems and we prefer or have to use an audio book. It's a shame that right now there's only the circus version out there on Audible, but I was able to get the previous one. I forget the name. Like Anna, you remember the name of the narrator for that version?
I've completely blanked on it.
Yeah, well, so did
Michael Rowe.
Yeah, something like that.
The Dirty Jobs guy? I'm kidding.
No.
I'm kidding.
No, hold on. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, it's Martin Shaw. That was it.
Oh, okay. There we go. Yeah, he does a good job. There's some times that, some things are pronounced a little bit odd, but, it's hard reading audiobooks, folks.
And by that, folks at home, by that notion, forgive any misspellings or anything in slides, because Lawrence is going by ear.
Oh, thank you for forgiving me. What did I mess up today?
Oh, Telperion is a TEL, but don't worry about it. Again, I know you're going by ear.
No, I am looking these up at the same time, so I am not
it's a
my ear.
It's a load of names and a language that is not a real
I
language.
Think probably
that we use on the
sometimes
earth,
when you see a typed a lowercase a typed, it's like this, and then the e. Sometimes I just I'll transmute one into the other. But thank you, Dutch, for gifting memberships to our audience there.
You're welcome. As far as reading it out loud, though, I act in local plays when I can, and I've actually taught myself how to cry on demand. Unfortunately,
that's a handy talent.
Thank you. Unfortunately, it has a downside to it. I can't read anything dramatic like that without my eyes tearing up.
Oh my goodness!
I can't even talk about something that I loved in my youth, like a cartoon show or a book, without my eyes tearing up. And I'm afraid to learn to stop doing that because I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to learn how to start again.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Definitely feel free to. I mean, definitely Tolkien's best in his own words. But now these two trees. So these are almost like replacements for the lamps before, except now both are in Valinor. And it is described quite beautifully, how once again Varda brings light to them. Well, or did they have? Well, she pours into them starlight. I think at some point I heard that.
Well, we hear that the Valar had gathered, quote, great stores of light that they brought with them to Aman from Middle Earth. Mm-hmm. They gathered up much of the destroying flame that had spilled out of the lamps that had marred the surface of Middle Earth, and they gathered as much of this light as they could, which was a lot of it, and they brought it to Aman.
Yeah. Okay. I think later there's something that Varda pours. But, I like that they each have their own associations and things they do. She does definitely light the stars later. But these trees, one has the golden light, one has silver light, and he goes into great detail about how the lights interact and how one kind of becomes stronger and the other dissipates, and then they go back and forth during the times of the day. Mm-hmm. And I think it's at noon that they're both.
Yeah, each tree waxes and wanes on a 12-hour cycle for a 24-hour day. But when one is waxing, the other is waning. So there's an hour, which is kind of dusk-like. There's an hour in the middle around the 6-hour mark where the lights of both are mingling, but they're weaker, and so they're dimmer, and so it's not night, but it's kind of like a twilight time. And so because there's actual changes in the light, before with Iluin and Ormal with the 2 lamps, there was no change in the light, so there was no time that was measured. Light, it was just always daytime, and the brightness would depend on where you were in Middle Earth. If you were in the center, of course, the lights of the 2 lamps were mingling, were even stronger. But now that the 2 trees wax and wane in their light, there's actual time to be measured. And that's why Tolkien writes that time is counted. This becomes the first hour, time's counted from this time. And since Telperion is the elder of the 2 trees and began to wax and wane first, they count the beginning of a day from the beginning of Telperion's cycle.
Okay, and yeah, it does mention that it is a 24-hour day, but in 12-hour halves.
And Tolkien going to great effort to explain why this is also a 24-hour day in Middle Earth.
Yeah. He didn't have to make it a 24-hour day.
He didn't have to, but he did.
But yeah, and of course, the trees were sung to growth by Yavanna. And
well, there's
should have been wearing green there, but
there's a very interesting line there, talking about oh, come on, you got to be able to do this. Talking about how the green of wait.
Sorry, I'm looking back because
sorry.
Our cat is in the room, and
Kitty.
Yeah, and he's hiding behind an amplifier back there next to the chest of drawers, and I just hear him moving around, so I keep looking to see what's going on.
Okay, so Laurelin is the one with the young green leaves and the clusters of yellow flame. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so that one, it says that the leaves were of a young green, like those of, where was it?
A new
opened beach. If I can get this picture to show up, I would love to share this with you, because I have a beech tree in my yard that was new opened just a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It'll ask me permission, but or are you going to put it in as your avatar?
No, I'm going to present.
Okay.
If I can find the picture, there it is.
Cool. Beech trees. Yes.
Continue. Okay. Continue. Did that work? The cloud operation was unsuccessful. You son of a woman.
Man, don't hold it against women. I know what you're saying there. You're trying to say that, biologically everyone.
It's not
who
actually
is a son. At least
it's not actually an insult.
No, I know. But anyway.
Give me a second here. I'm going to fix this. There we go.
I think we can, if we want to come back to this visual, we can. But then one of the next things, because actually at this point, after the 2 trees, Tolkien just goes straight into describing the Valar in different things they do. Like Yavanna would often, it's hard to say, the way it's written. It's almost like she would leave Valinor now and then and just kind of check on things to see, if Melkor did anything to the world. And
there are 3 of the Valar particularly who feel very strongly tied to Middle Earth and who go back to check it frequently. Yeah. And so Yavanna's one because she loves the trees and the plants that she's grown, the trees especially, and she wants to go back and as much as she can repair some of the hurts that Melkor's done in Middle Earth. And then Ulmo, of course, he doesn't dwell in Aman. He dwells in Ekaya and the surrounding oceans, which the idea of an encircling ocean you can compare to the Greek idea of the oikomene, the idea of like an ocean that surrounds the whole earth. And that's where Ulmo lives. And Ulmo, since it says that he's in all of the waterways and all of the veins of Middle Earth, his influence is there. And he loves Middle Earth and he loves the children of Ilúvatar, although they haven't yet come forth. So he's there trying to fight against Melkor. And then Oromë, the hunter, as well, is one of the last. I believe he was the last to leave Middle Earth and go to Aman, and he comes back pretty frequently to Middle Earth because many of the animals and beasts have been corrupted by Melkor, have been made sort of evil, and they have horns and they're scary. And Oromë goes frequently to hunt these sort of evil beasts in the forest and try to clean and purge the forest together with his trusty steed Nahar, his horse, who is the primeval horse.
And his horn, the Valaroma.
Yes.
And so we were.
All right, the picture's up.
Yeah. We covered the Valar last time, but we didn't talk about one thing. Like there were some that, like Ulmo doesn't stay in Valinor, right? He's pretty much.
Oh, nice.
You can,
ocean.
Yeah, you can see that there's like a cone in the middle of it, that like a brown cone. That is how every leaf starts in the spring on a beach. You can see behind it one of those cones literally unwrapping as the leaf is unfolding from the from its pod. So when it said a newly opened beach, I was like, I know exactly what that means, because I got to watch it almost as it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Thanks for sharing.
And by the way,
Tolkien had a real love of trees, and that comes out in his work.
And
so I'm wondering,
those leaves are as soft as silk.
So is this when, with the two trees and this opening here, is this also symbolic of when now there are flowers that can open?
So, well, Laurelin, although it has leaves like a beech, it actually produces fruits as well, which, I mean, beeches produce a sort of nut to procreate with, but they don't produce a fruit.
He only says it had the color of newly opened beech.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
And we don't know, we actually, the shape of the fruit is never described. We don't know what they look like, the fruits that these trees produce.
Oh, okay. I know, but I mean, this is like before we mentioned that, Yavanna, her seeds started to grow earlier, but there was no flowering at that point. I'm just wondering, is it now that flowering can happen?
I think so.
Or I guess maybe I was just kind of swayed into thinking that because of the picture.
But not yet in Middle Earth, because there hasn't been any change. Although I will, a little correction here, the stars were actually brought forth in the beginning, in the very beginning. The stars were the only lights in Middle Earth. And so Varda, it says here, I'm looking at page 39, so right after the description of the two trees blossoming, it says that as the ages drew on to the hour appointed by Ilúvatar for the coming of the firstborn, which is the elves, Middle Earth lay in a twilight beneath the stars that Varda had wrought in the ages forgotten of her labors in Ea. So it's not that there's no light whatsoever in Middle Earth, but the only light that exists is the light of the stars, which is why when the elves awake, the very first thing they see are stars. And that's why they love Varda more than all of the other Valar, because she's the creator of the stars. Elves love to be under starlight more than any other type of light. They think it's the most beautiful, and that's why they call her Elbereth Gilthoniel, Queen of the Stars.
Yeah, there was something in this section, though, that said about what she did with the stars, and it was right after the creation of these trees.
Yeah, it's this line that I just read where it mentions that Varda brought the stars into being a very long time ago. I don't think you'll find another section about her doing something with the stars.
Yeah, Middle Earth lay in a twilight beneath the stars that Varda had wrought in the ages forgotten.
Okay. It didn't say she wrought them now. She had brought.
Right.
Yes.
This is what happens when you skim.
I'm not skimming, man. Like, I don't know how many times I've read this, but it's just packed with so much. But yeah, I remember we did talk about that, but I don't know. Maybe she just made them brighter or something. But there's a number.
If she did, there's no mention of it in the text. I'm sorry, Lawrence.
So what? What else? I didn't make any additional slides at this point. You could really make a slide for each line.
No,
You
but
know,
between these two letters, I think there's some microtext that she increased the lightness. Oh
Well,
no,
Um,
we have
it
that
was a piece of lint.
Melkor is working with fire. It talks about how he wields cold and fire together, as we learned
mhm.
from Rings of Power, that cold fires or evil fires are not hot. Evil fires are cold, and it's a recurring theme of the Rings of Power show. And you can tell that they took deep inspiration from the Silmarillion when they
Yeah.
put that inspired plot point in.
Well,
Anyway,
But that's
so
but
do you
that's
want to
not
go to
it
the
even.
did
children?
But
surprise
but
me.
but that's
It
not
did
even.
surprise me that Autumno was so far north because I don't know, but that might have something to do with it, right? Autumno is in the
Yes.
north, and but there's still fires beneath the ground. I don't know.
Hmm.
But that's not
Yeah.
even what the book says. It says that he wielded cold and fire from the tops of the mountains. They tend to be cold, to the deep furnaces that are beneath them, where it would be hot. He deals with both of those. As long as it's cruel, violent, or deadly, he laid it to his charge.
Yeah,
But Anna just said that Rings of
well,
Power
no,
made
I
it so that
vaguely
fire
remember
is
that because
cold.
I had put that out of my mind for a while, but I vaguely
Sorry to
remembered
remind
that,
you.
and yeah, and it was
Rings of Power is coming back this year.
that's
Oh
right,
yay!
that's right.
You excited?
No, actually, I
No, no,
hate that it
Season
is
3, baby.
because my favorite YouTube's critics, who I really enjoy listening to, will then spend 10 weeks going on about Rings of
I
Power,
don't think they're
and
going to be
I
spending as
hear,
much time on it anymore.
well, I don't
I
know.
hope they do. I had so much fun with season 2 and all of the
Yeah,
discourse
well,
around
no,
it.
no, no. I mean, it's
I
fun.
I
Like I
just
really love Platoon's. It was much belated, but finally he did the season 2 and everything. But yeah,
He's very thorough in his work, and
yeah,
he's so knowledgeable in the lore that it does take a long time, and then it takes 10,000 years to get it through YouTube copyright. So
yeah.
best of
and
luck.
I
Do it again. No.
and honestly, I love listening to him. But once I've heard his, I don't need to hear all the others talking about it. They're saying
Right.
the same things.
No.
I'm happy to hear what everyone has to say about it. And so far, the things we've heard about Rings of Power season 3 have been really promising for there being excellent discussion about it. I'm quite excited. I'm saying all of this as diplomatically as I can.
Well,
It was very well put. I appreciated it.
No, I think we're gonna have a lot of fun. And at the very least in the film criticism sphere, someone's gonna be talking about that show.
yeah. Well,
They'll be the
I don't
only
know if
ones
anyone else
watching it.
will.
They'll be the
Yeah.
only ones watching it too.
it's something you
Oh,
can't begin
I'll
to
watch
do
it.
with just just the appendices alone. It start off with just the wrong approach, and then you can't make it right afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people are willing to forgive some things, like there's changes in the Lord of the Rings, from the books, and in adapting it
Well,
to a film.
yes,
There's
I
changes,
can talk quite a bit about the adaptations
yeah,
at length. There's a lot of
but there's reasons for
interviews and
them.
things about why Jackson and
Yeah,
Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens made a lot of changes to the books. They talk about crimes against the books. Actually, Random Film Talk has a really good series about this. If you're
I'm just
interested in
I,
changes between the books and the films, although I think he's only read The Fellowship of the Ring, I don't think he's even read The Two Towers and The Return of the King. But it's a really good job talking about changes because he's listened to all of the commentary tracks like over and over again. He's very
yeah,
obsessive
and
about that, and so
and
there's a lot of good
there's
stuff in
some
that.
that I wouldn't. There's some things that I would like. In some ways, I think it's a better approach to leave some things out and just don't touch them
yeah,
rather than change them.
I'm just glad that the Two Towers they included the elves coming to Helm's
Oh,
Deep.
Hammerhand.
Helm's
Uh-huh.
Deep, and they included the scene of Legolas skating down the stairs on that shield. I
My
mean,
dad
if
is
they had
still
left,
bigly mad about that scene in particular, and about everything, all of the changes to Faramir's character.
oh yeah, when Faramir was tempted by the ring, oh, I'm so glad they left that in from the book. Oh wait,
I think the changes to Faramir's character work perfectly fine, and the need to make a cohesive second film that stands within a trilogy, but also is its own story for the year that they're releasing it. So I understand the crimes against the book that they made, and they were very aware of this when they made changes to Faramir's character. But I remember being in the theater watching Two Towers, and my like at the shield surfing scene, my dad leans over and is like, "This is so 2002." He was so upset about it.
One of my best friends, when the elves showed up, he put his hand to his head, and it had been a long time since I had read the books. I hardly remembered any of it.
Yeah.
And I said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "Plot-induced headache. Elves where they don't belong."
Yeah, I know. The a lot of changes, but they were forgivable by many, at least, you know. And I wasn't super bothered, but yeah, and a lot of the things I had forgotten, but then got reminded again when we were like rereading things, and in our move, we are actually listening to the Fellowship books again in audiobook form, but nonetheless, man, I could understand why they
And I'm
didn't
reading
have
too.
like
I'm also reading Fellowship.
like Gandalf's speech in Rivendell, at the Fellowship meeting. It was really long. I could that could have been a film in and of itself, because he basically describes,
Well, man,
the
the
history of
Council of
everything.
Elrond, as they have filmed it and edited it for the Fellowship of the Ring film, it's a brilliant scene in terms
Hmm.
of having a lot of exposition delivered pretty expeditiously, you could say. And if you're ever interested, you go into the appendices, the behind the scenes material for the Fellowship of the Ring. There's actually a really great study in editing where they cut down. They show them cutting down some of the lines that they originally had for the Council of Elrond, and so. Oh yeah, sorry. This keyboard's much larger than that keyboard, and I make typos all the time. Quickly move off that one.
So do
Um,
I. I'm just like showing that, you can do it too.
but anyway, yeah, I delete it, but I can't ever delete things from your site, Lawrence. But yeah, anyway, there were all these lines in the Council of Elrond that no longer exist in the film as we see it today. There was a line where Elrond goes 9 walkers to counter the 9 riders, which is a line from the book or something similar to it. But they show basically the process of how they eventually decided which lines to take out and how the scene flows as it does today. And it's again a masterclass in film editing if you're ever interested.
Well, there we go. So not everybody's pleased, but you know,
Oh hell, dear! I was so in love with him as a kid.
wow. Well, let's see. We basically don't have much left, other than, at this point, it was talking about, basically, I guess, a day in the life of a Valar almost, and what different ones would do and stuff. Now that they're living in Valinor, or most of them. And then he speaks about the elves and men, and so and starts laying out some of the differences between them, even though they technically aren't here yet. And that's the thing that could be kind of like a little bit challenging. Sometimes it's like, all right, he's kind of like foreshadowing them, but it helps because then later when you get these stories, you remember back to some of these basic descriptions, like basically how the elves were definitely closer to the Valar. A whole bunch of them stayed back in Valinor, for example. But even those that came to Middle Earth basically had, you know,
Is the opposite actually. All of the elves awoke in Middle Earth, and most of the
oh yeah,
elves then
yeah, I
traveled to
know.
Valinor, but not all.
I'm talking about later. Because remember they went to Valinor and then some came back, and those that went back to
Okay,
Valinor
okay.
stayed there, and then those that came back,
Those that were forcibly
yeah,
came back to Middle Earth.
yeah, as
The
opposed to men
outcasts.
who were never there, and were definitely they made the world round just to keep them out of there. and stuff. So it's like this is where he kind of like foreshadows the differences, and it's like it's not until later in the stories that you really get to know him. But I guess it's good because then when you get into the stories, you remember back and it reinforces it. Basically, what I'm saying, and I'm trying to remember exactly what he's saying here, but I mean, he hints at the thing again about men there being a special gift, and he had mentioned it even before from Ilúvatar to men, but it was a secret, and no one even knew what that gift would be. But the men, of course, when they still not created yet, but when they do come about, they do not
created but not yet brought to
Correct.
the surface.
All right. Oh, Jesus.
Sorry, Lauren. But they were in the song. They were created from the beginning. They're slumbering under the earth, all of the children of Ilúvatar.
But it's funny, the book says that Manwë was appointed to be the vicegerent of Ilúvatar. I had to look that up. I was like, vicegerent? I mean, at first I thought it said vice regent, and I was like, no, wait, no, that's not what it says. An administrative deputy or lieutenant chosen to represent a sovereign, ruler, or deity and to exercise their power and authority.
Well, I mean, that's you know,
The term combines the Latin vice in place of and gerere to carry on.
Yeah.
And now you know. And knowing it's after battle.
Well, that's basically. I mean, he may be the head of the Valar, but that's really what all the Valar are intended to be.
No, he would be king of the world of the Valar and elves and men, and the chief defense against the evil of Melkor.
Yeah, except when Tolkien steps in. He's the leader, but they're all kind of like playing a role underneath him. And, you know, as stewards of the land and everything. So, but he basically, he was the one that was closest to Eru. So he has, I guess, the best idea of what the plans are, although not the complete idea of the plans. So, in any case, anything more to be said about this brief bit about elves and men at this point?
There's a lot to say actually about the destiny of men, and actually, I want to read.
But it comes back multiple times, so I'm not sure at what point you want to talk about it or not.
Oh, I definitely want to talk about it now if it's all right.
Okay, all right.
I think this is very essential. This is on page 41 in my version, and I'll just sort of skim through. But talks about how the dealings of the Ainur have indeed mostly been with the elves, for Ilúvatar made them warlike in nature to the Ainur, though less in might and stature, whereas to men he gave strange gifts. This is, of course, Tolkien thinking about sort of almost the privileged position that humans have in our relationship to divinity and to death or God. And so then he talks about how Ilúvatar sits in thought, and he says, I love the earth, which shall be a mansion for the Quendi, for the Quendi, which are the elves, and the Atani, which are men. The Quendi shall be the fairest of all creatures. They'll have and conceive and bring forth more beauty than all of my children, and they'll have the greater bliss in this world. But to the Atani I will give a new gift. So this is the gift, the special gift of men that he gives them. Therefore he willed that the hearts of men should seek beyond the world and should find no rest therein, but they should have a virtue to shape their life amid the powers and chances of the world, beyond the music of the Ainur, which is his fate to all things else. And of their operation everything should be, in form and deed, completed, and the world fulfilled into the last and smallest. So he's talking about how men, in a way, have a sense of agency and an ability to make themselves more than they are through their short lifespans. And this is actually a theme that comes up again and again. Is that the elves, to do so. Yes, the elves don't have exactly the same drive and fire. They are able to achieve much because of their immortality. But men, for all our lives that are very short, men are able to achieve great renown and great deeds even within this very short lifespan. And I'll continue really quick. But Ilúvatar knew that men, being set amid the turmoils of the powers of the world, would stray often and would not use their gifts in harmony. Therefore he said, these two in their time shall find that all they do redounds at the end only to the glory of my work. And so it's kind of the same thing as it was said about Melkor, is that even when men are rebellious. All of this is part of the plan of Ilúvatar. And so the elves kind of grieve about men. It says here that they think that men are grief to Manwë. It seems to the elves that men resemble Melkor most, although it mentions that Melkor has ever feared and hated men. Even the men who serve Melkor, he fears and hates them. And so once more, I'll just read really quick. It is one with this gift of freedom that the children of men dwell only a short space in the world alive, and are not bound to it, and depart soon, whither the elves know not. Whereas the elves remain until the end of days, and their love of the earth and all the world is more single and more poignant therefore, and as the years lengthen, ever more sorrowful. For the elves die not till the world dies, unless they are slain or waste in grief, and to both these seeming deaths they are subject. Neither does age subdue their strength, unless one grow weary of 10,000 centuries, and in dying they are gathered to the halls of Mandos and Valinor, whence they may in time return. But the sons of men die indeed, and leave the world. Wherefore they are called the guests, or the strangers. Death is their fate, the gift of Ilúvatar, which as time wears even the powers shall envy. But Melkor's cast his shadow on it, and confounded it with darkness, and brought forth evil out of good, and fear out of hope. Sorry to read such a long passage, but this is essential to everything else we're going to talk about in the Silmarillion, and everything that comes out in the Lord of the Rings. It's perfect. Men have the gift of being able to leave the plane of leave Middle-earth, to leave Arda, to leave the spear of Ea, and when men die, their spirits go somewhere else that even the Valar don't realize what it is. And so in a way, this is Tolkien thinking men have almost a privileged relationship with Eru Ilúvatar. Even though they're his second born, they're more prone to flaws and to mistakes. Men have more drive and more ability to create and achieve. Even if their achievements are flawed, they can achieve more greatness. Whereas elves they continue forever, they wear on forever, they've achieved perfection in a way, so there is no growth, there is no increase that elves are able to have, where humans are able to do almost unlimited growth, other than the fact that they're mortal. That's actually the reason why their lives are so short, is because their potential for growth and achievement is so great. And it's their strength and also their weakness.
Let me pause you one moment.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, this is all really important, but just for our audience, just to catch up on it, like we covered last time, but just in case people weren't here, please listen back in the previous episode. But the elves, when they die, they go to Mandos, and they're basically like there for the life of the world, you know. And of course, there could be life beyond that. Reality or time beyond that, but they're tied to Arda. And so basically, after they die, they're in Mandos. They still exist, but they're there in the kind of like the realm of the afterlife, and they're just stuck there until the world is over, until the song ends, so to speak.
Mentioned here that they can return from the halls of Mandos, and some elves do. That happened in the case with Glorfindel.
Oh, okay.
So no death is truly death for the elves. However, since they are bound to Arda, it's talked about in other places too, that elves come to envy those who are mortal, because they as Arda wears on towards its end, it will eventually become a weariness for the elves to stay in Arda, and when the world ends, so will the elves. Whereas men have the potential for a completely unknown, a completely mysterious existence beyond the plane of Arda, but presumably in the presence of Eru Ilúvatar, much like death in the afterlife in a Christian sense.
So let me ask you a question.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I just wanted to ask you a question. The line here that regarding men, death is their fate, the gift of Ilúvatar, which as time wears, even the powers shall envy. What powers? The powers,
whenever Tolkien uses that word, it refers to the Valar. And so the Valar, as you know, they get weary the more time that they spend in Arda. it's the burden of Arda wears on them, and so the powers get more and more tired. And it's said at the second Ainulindale, the second song of the Ainur, that the Valar will become young again. All of the weariness of Varda, or of Arda and its ages shall be taken from off their shoulders, and they'll be renewed. But it's because men are able to put that weariness aside through death and completely leave the plane of Arda, that even the Valar are somewhat envious of the special gift of men. And the Valar don't understand the mind of Eru fully when it comes to the fate of men. And there's just two. Oh, sorry, go on.
They declare to the elves that men will join in the second music of the Ainur.
Mm-hmm. But
the Valar know that.
Men will be brought back from wherever that plane is that they are, but it's said that even Manwë, who understands most fully the mind of Eru Ilúvatar, does not know what happens to men.
Gotcha.
So men will be it'll be almost like a second resurrection of like all of those who have died will be brought back. Go back to John writing in Revelation to see the Christian allegory. But the ultimate fate of men, and also what happens to everyone after the second song of the Ainur is unclear. But there are just 2 points I want to bring out here, which will be very important later on in the Silmarillion. First, that death being a gift. This is something that is very rarely given to other non-mortal or to other immortal children of Ilúvatar. And so one example would be Eärendil, the mariner, and Elwë, his wife. They have children who are half elven, most famously the twins Elros and Elrond. And Elros, because of that, it's because of Beren Luthien. Luthien goes forward to Manwë and weeps before him and sings a song of such beauty that Manwë changes his mind on the mortality question. And this is all part of the song. Manwë is kind of like a constitutional judge. He interprets the song in ways and can make amendments to it that are all in alignment with the will of Eru Ilúvatar. But it's because of that Luthien becomes the first to have the gift to be able to die alongside Beren, her mortal husband, because their love is so deep, and she's able to go beyond the plane of Arda and to leave. And then of course Arwen, Elrond, Elros, some other elves are also receive this gift of they can choose whether to have the immortality of the elves or the gift of death, and to be able to progress to something else, but that's unknown. And Elrond's brother Elros chose mortality. Elrond chose immortality, and all of this background is part of why Elrond is grieving so when his daughter Arwen, who has the very rare choice among elves. It's very rare for elves to be able to make this choice, but because of Arwen's lineage, she's able to make this choice when she loves Aragorn. She chooses to die alongside him and move beyond. And that's partly why Elrond grieves this so much, because he knows that as she moves to a plane beyond the universe, it's not like, dying and going to the halls of Mandos. He will not see his daughter again, or at least in his understanding of the fate of the elves, because some things are still unclear. But as he understands it, he won't see his daughter again. And so that question of mortality, immortality, and the choice that some critical elves that we'll talk about later in the story will make, this is really essential. And then one more thing that has to do with the fall of Numenor, which we'll get to eventually, is that Melkor corrupts this idea of death and makes it seem, even though it is a gift, and it's one of the most precious gifts that Eru Ilúvatar is given to any of his children. In some ways, men are most favored above all of them. But Melkor corrupts this to the Numenorians especially. He makes it seem that death is something to be feared, that death is evil. It says here that Melkor casts his shadow on death, and he confounds it with darkness, brings forth evil out of good, and fear out of hope. So he makes death to seem something to be evil, to be feared. And it's through that corruption that in the Second Age, Melkor, as Morgoth, is able to take over the kingdom of Numenor and corrupt all of the Numenorians to his will. And that's actually why the Numenorians, they try to invade Valinor, because Melkor convinces them that they can forcibly take the gift of immortality to themselves, that the elves are hoarding immortality or something. And of course, that's not possible. It's only Eru Ilúvatar gives immortality to people. And it's, in a way, immortality is almost not something to be desired, because it means a stagnation, a stopping of progress that you can make, a sort of a dimming of your drive, and eventually you'll become wearied because you're tied to the earth. Sorry. Anyway, those two important points I wanted to touch on really quick because they become central to the stories we'll talk about later.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's good to mention them now. It's something that is also, a reoccurring theme, but it's something that our show Babylon 5 brings up again, when we have a character named Lorien who, I guess spoilers, we find is the first being, and basically the first living sentient being in the, at least in the galaxy, I guess we could say. But basically he basically tells Ivanova at one point, how lucky human beings are with such short lives, because they can see things such as love as like something that lasts forever, when, you know from his view and from the view of anyone that lives such extended periods of time or has even immortality, it's something, all things come to an end. And it's basically paralleling, some of the, like, even the immortality in the sense of the elves, still being bound to Arda, but at least living until the end of time on Arda. It's like they'll feel grief over the, like, trees that have once lived and are no longer there, or they'll feel grief of, bodies of water or natural formations that change over time, and maybe aren't as beautiful as they once were, and everything like that. And so it's like this sense of loss is inherent in their lives, whereas in men it's too brief to really be, I guess, to feel as deep of loss of things, because you know it's a shorter time of having known them.
Yeah,
um,
Lorien said, to live on as we have is to leave behind joy, love, and companionship because we know it to be transitory of the moment. We know it will turn to ash. Only those whose lives are brief can imagine that love is eternal. You should embrace that remarkable illusion. It may be the greatest gift your race has ever received.
yeah, but getting older still doesn't feel good.
It beats
Although
our
I
only
would
current alternative.
I'd argue this is a little different though, because it's it's sort of like, it's the fact, in Babylon 5, it's sort of the fact that love and connection and all of these are illusory, nothing lasts forever. I envy you guys being able to delude yourselves. Whereas in Tolkien's worldview, it's not that the elves are very, very wise because of their uncountable years of knowledge gathered together. But it's not that, humans, by their short lifespan, are deluded into thinking things are more meaningful. It's almost that men is able to achieve a higher density of achievement within their very short lives, and that elves in a way are actually almost blinded by their long lifespans, and that it's not that elves see perfectly clearly, or the Valar see perfectly clearly, and men, in not being able to see clearly at all, somehow have more joy. Rather, the elves have more bliss and the men have more suffering. But men, in the midst of their suffering and their trial, have more drive, and in some ways are able to see more clearly certain aspects of the will of Ilúvatar. So it's somewhat different, and I like that it's not just like, oh well, men are stupid and blind and short lifespans, and so they can think that love is real or something like that.
Well, I wasn't saying that's what Tolkien's saying, but it's like a
No,
very,
it is an interesting comparison, and
well, no, I think it's borrowed
and
from,
Lorien being
yeah,
probably a direct
yeah,
reference.
yeah,
That's
yeah, it's
dreams.
borrowed from,
And
definitely. And but I think that's a way that it almost humanifies it a little bit more, because it's harder to, I mean, I can understand the concept, but it's harder to say, okay, so with our shorter lifespans, we have more drive and ambition and stuff, but it's almost like, in this, I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying that, at least in the story of Babylon 5, it's something that in being there, talking to the first being who is immortal. I mean, this mortal woman, Ivanova, kind of like from him directly gets this really obvious explanation about, or shall we say, some sort of consolation for the fact that, we are
Mm-hmm.
mortal, and she's going to die, and her life is very short compared to his. But
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of like a way that he offers a consolation that is still profound and meaningful. And in
Mm-hmm.
this story, it is still also very deep and meaningful, but more of a legacy over all time, and not as individualized. Although I guess as we get into the
Mm-hmm.
stories, maybe some individual humans will be able to kind of like hopefully witness some of that themselves, or not
Mm-hmm.
witness it necessarily, but
But
come
as
to
long
understand a
lived
bit of it.
as long lived as they are, the elves still feel very deep, strong love and connection to the earth, to each other. And so it's not that and the Valar as well. The Valar feel deep love and connection for each other and for the children of Ilúvatar. So it's not that they're so long lived that they see that love and all of those other things are an illusion, because that isn't something that Tolkien would believe. Tolkien believed in eternal love, in our world, through the power of God and resurrection. He believed that his love to his wife Edith would be eternal, and so he wanted to have ways to express that notion of love and connection actually truly being eternal through
Yeah.
different
Well,
lifespans.
oh yeah, that's one area where I was talking about these words of Lorien and stuff, but that's one thing that did bother me when I first heard them. I wouldn't say as in an artistic level, but in just maybe a personal selfish level, is I would like to think that love goes beyond this life.
Mhm.
And I would love to think that the people I love will connect again, that I will
Mhm.
connect with them again in some other existence beyond this life. And then, of course, um, depending on what different people's faiths are, that is the case. And
Well, at
so
least for Tolkien.
I do find this version much warmer, and shall we say more endearing, and shall we say maybe a little better gift from a loving God in a way.
Mhm. At least for Tolkien, with his love for Edith, you think about it. We'll talk about it some other time, I'm sure. But there's a famous story before they were married where Tolkien was on leave from the war, and he goes and meets Edith, and they go together into the woods, and she sings and dances for him. And Tolkien, in that moment, thinking, I want the things I'm thinking and feeling right now. I'm going to take them and make them a cornerstone of Western literature and Western fantasy forever, as sort of the ideal of chivalric love, and in modern fantasy. And he certainly did that. I think he was able to take his love for Edith, which goes through all of the romances, all of the love that comes out in his various stories of love between elves and men, between men and women, and it comes out very, very strongly. And especially the story of Beren and Luthien, which we'll get to, is the crystallization of the things he felt for his wife Edith.
Mm.
And so, I mean, in one way, his love has been able to become immortal through literature, and then all other fantasy since Tolkien is based on Tolkien. And so, in a
Yeah.
way, his love has inspired pretty much every fantasy novel on the shelves these days.
Well, very good. Well, Gavin, no worries. You will be with Eru in time.
Yes.
No, I mean, I find some of what they did in Babylon 5 beautiful, but yeah, I remember being kind of like at that time, like,
Mhm.
eh.
Oh, it's a fascinating idea to
Yeah,
explore, and I don't begrudge them that.
yeah, but yeah. Okay, and Dutch, I think we are at our final phase here because yes, next time we are beginning with the creation of the dwarves. So, and
Excellent.
they're a different case completely.
Yes.
As well, I guess you would still say they are children of Ilúvatar, even though they had a different surrogate parent.
Yes. Children of his adoption rather than children of his choice.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm just putting up your chats. I don't know what they mean.
I had said Yavin had said he'll take immortality, and I said not me. And I typed, that way lies madness and sorrow in this world. But unfortunately, autocorrect thought I needed to say was instead of way, and I didn't catch it the first time because I'm not wearing my glasses.
I mean, immortality doesn't necessarily mean permanence in the form you're currently in. It means you will continue to exist, and that which you've learned will mean something.
Okay, last I checked, immortal meant not dying.
I know, but some of us mean it in different ways.
I agree with Lawrence here because we'll get into it with the immortality or the reincarnation of dwarves in Tolkien's Legendarium, but I would say immortality would refer to immortality of the spirit and of one's knowledge and one's self, rather than like your physical body as it is right now just doesn't ever age.
Right, now that I would accept.
Yeah, well, I don't.
But that takes us off this world for the most part, and to the next.
Well, doesn't it all?
Not in Highlander, it doesn't.
Well, one of the things I do like about this ambition that Tolkien speaks of is it at least something you read in there, and it kind of like seemed to inspire that men would also be forced to think beyond this world.
Yes.
And so at some point we're leaving, folks. Might as well think beyond. All right, so I guess we're done for today. On that bombshell.
It's my fault. I gotta go to work.
No worries. We will confer behind the scenes about when we were appearing next, but it will be obviously around this time of day. But I can't do next Monday because I have jury duty. Hopefully that will only last one day.
Hopefully.
But, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
I've always wanted to serve on a jury. It's just they never choose me.
Well, I don't mind. I certainly would want someone to take it seriously if they were serving on a jury for me someday for some reason. So I would do so. But of course, in the back of your mind, you're just like, I hope not.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
We're going to get you off to your slides and the rest of your day. So that's it. I guess we'll just say goodbye.
All right. Bye.
Good night, everyone.